All right, I think we're going to get started. So, thank you all for coming today. It's my last performance at Penn before I graduate, and today is my last day of undergrad, which is, I just realized that today, that I'm going to do this send-off recital at the last day of class. And actually, I went to Tristan's recital yesterday, and he motivated me a lot, so he just made me start reflecting my journeys at Penn and my 4 years at Penn. I'm not gonna talk a lot about it, but it's been a very unforgettable 4 years, and I really appreciate all your support, my mentors, my professors, and my friends. I'm really grateful. So today, it's more like a space we could share music together than like a formal recital that's showing off techniques and stuff, which is not the purpose of it. And also this recital is part of my performance program of the Mary Anderson solo program. So this year I want to focus on celebrating works from female composers, because I think this is something that's not being done enough now currently. So last summer I came across this album by Isara, and she recorded a whole album of Clara Schumann, and she's also very actively promoting female composers, so I was inspired, and that grows into this program. So it's been a while, and yeah, so also my friend Ning went to a concert 2 weeks before, and it's a Mahler concert, and literally it's a Philadelphia Orchestra concert, and on the program note it says Mahler's wife was forced to give up the composition career after she married. So this was kind of also the theme of this concert. A lot of these women composers, they were not given enough opportunities to compose, and their works are not being performed enough for people to know. So I hope, so the goal today is when you walk out of this recital hall, you will be curious about maybe searching on Spotify about these women composers, Clara Schumann, Florence Price, and a lot of other women composers as well. And that's the goal of today's concert. So yeah, and also, yeah, I think every time I've been through a lot of performances this semester. It's been a really, really hectic and crazy. I've been through 3 performances and 4 performances the past week, and this is the last one. And I feel like every time I perform, I grow a little bit. I grow with the music. I grow with the interaction between me and the audience and the space we're sharing. So whether it is through the sufferings of practicing, or it's just the performance itself, or it's through the interaction with the people. And so yeah, I just think there's something special about performance as an occasion, which is a collaborative and sharing space for both the performer and audience. And I hope you all enjoy today's concert. So I'm gonna play both cello and piano for today's concert. A lot of you know that I play piano. I started learning piano at 4, so piano was actually the birthday gift from my parents for me on my 4th birthday. And I started learning cello a little bit after piano in primary school, because my dad really, really loves cello. But it's more like a company and like a secondary instrument, because I've been mainly focusing on spending a lot of time on piano and getting better. But I would really like to thank my teacher, Carolina, who's here today. I've been working with her since last summer, and it's really, without her, I couldn't be standing here to challenge myself a little bit and explore a different realm, a different repertoire. So I'm really grateful. So yeah, the first piece I'm gonna play for today's concert is a piece by Clara Schumann. It's actually a romance written by Clara Schumann for violin and piano, but it's transcribed to cello and piano. So, and I invite my friend, dear friend, Brian, to accompany for me. So I hope you all enjoy this piece. And I'm gonna talk, so it's a lecture recital, but I'm gonna talk more about Clara Schumann. I made this whole little timeline thing, and a lot of lecture her notes. I'm gonna talk about it more after I play. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the music. the 13th, 1819, and she was born in a household where her parents divorced when she was five years old, and then she remained with her father because her mother kind of had an affair with another man, and then she remarried. So Clara was like shepherded back and forth between her parents, and then her parents would warn each other not to spoil her. And then, so she was forced to become self-reliant in a very early age. So she was very resilient, and because of the lack of mother's love, so she has to rely on herself. And this is where I think her inner strength comes from. And then she first met Robert Schumann in 1828, and then she was actually a child prodigy in performing piano before she started composing. So she was born in Leipzig, so it's a city in Germany. And so when first Schumann encountered Clara, he admired her playing so much. So Schumann was much older than Clara, and so Robert Schumann asked permission from his mother to stop studying law and then transfer to studying music, which is the same case for Stravinsky, because Stravinsky also studied law before. And also, so Clara Schumann's childhood was filled with a lot of tours and concerts, and she had a very good reception all over Europe, especially from 1831 to 1832. She was doing this Paris Recital and European tour, and so people were able to see this child prodigy. And then also from this tour is when she transformed from a child prodigy to a young woman performer. And then in 1837 to 1838, she had those Vienna recitals, and these were very important for her because she performed the Appassionata Sonata from Beethoven, which is also one of my favorite Beethoven sonatas. And then the reception was very good, so I'm just gonna read one of the critics. Said, the appearance of this artist can be regarded as epoch-making. In her creative hands, the most ordinary passage, the most routine motive, acquires a significant meaning, a color, which only those with the most consummate artistry can give. So also, like a fun fact, Chopin and Liszt both know Clara. Chopin described her playing to Franz Liszt, who came to hear one of Clara's concerts and then praised her extravagantly. And apparently also Paganini knew her as well. And a friend of Schubert even gave Clara an autographed copy of Schubert's Lieder for Clara. In 1835, Clara performed her own piano concerto in A minor with the Leipzig Orchestra, and it was conducted by Felix Mendelssohn. So 1837, when Clara was 18, Schumann proposed to her, and then this marriage was first very strongly opposed by Clara's father for some unknown reason, but the couple sued Clara's father to the court, and the judge eventually approved their marriage. So they get married in 1840 on September 12th. And so there is a piece today I'm gonna dedicate to this story. I'm gonna talk more about it later. And then it was, so after marriage, Clara kept performing, but a lot of household and chores would prevent her from keeping up with her output as being a composer. And in 1853, the couple met Brahms. So Brahms was introduced to the Schumann couple, and they liked him very much, and it helped them a lot. And then, so a year later, Schumann's psychiatric illness got worsened. He started seeing like angelic visions and having a lot of hallucinations. So he was warning Clara that he might do some harm to her. And then in that same year, Schumann attempted suicide, but was rescued by someone, but then was permanently sent to a psychiatric hospital and confined there until death. So it was very hard for Clara during this time because they have 8 children, and Clara had to take care of all the children. And then Clara was not permitted to see Robert Schumann in the hospital. Only Brahms could visit him. So Clara was only able to visit him 2 days before his death. And Robert Schumann appeared to recognize her, but only able to speak a few words. So I'm gonna talk about Robert Schumann and Clara Schumann later, because there's a piece dedicated to that. But for the next piece, I'm playing on piano. It's one of Clara's work, and Clara as a composer. So Clara received her musical education mainly by her father, and she learned to compose, and from childhood to middle age, she produced a good amount of work. And then her chamber works, one of the most famous works from her was the piano trio in G minor. A lot of chamber groups have played that. And then one of that was one of the three romances for violin and piano, which I played the transcribed version just now. And then the next piece is a scherzo by Clara. So the scherzo in C minor was composed in 1845, and very interestingly, this work showed the influence of Chopin on Clara. So Chopin was one of Clara's most admired composers, and she was very deeply influenced by Chopin. So the stormy arpeggios you're gonna hear in this piece, it's actually from Chopin's influence. And so this piece is also a very technically demanding piece. It may not seem to be very hard as those fancy sonatas, like Liszt sonatas and stuff, but it's very, when you really play it, it requires a lot of accuracy and it's very technically demanding. So the work I'm gonna play it has 3 sections, so it's an ABA structure. So the first and the third sessions are very stormy, and then the second session was kind of a chorale, a very relaxed style. Yeah, so I'm gonna play this piece and hope you all enjoy it. So I have a lot to say about Florence Price, and the reason being that I am in Professor Samuel's Mary Anderson seminar this semester, and in this semester we really learned a lot about Mary Anderson, and because this is also part of the performance project from the Mary Anderson program, so I think it's interesting to draw the connection between Price and Anderson. So in my seminar, I have been looking at archive in the Kislak Center, and I was able to find correspondence between Price and Mary Anderson. And it's not only Price and Mary Anderson, it's also Price's daughter, Florence Price. It's the same name as her mother, but with the Robinson. So her daughter also wrote to Mary Anderson a lot, and Mary Anderson has really helped Price in promoting her work. Yeah, I just realized I haven't introduced Price yet, so I'm gonna do that right now. So Florence Price was probably one of the most well-known Black African-American composers. She was born in 1887 in Arkansas, and her father was a dentist and her mother was a music teacher whom she mainly received musical education from. So he was given the first piano performance at 4, and then she composed the first composition and published it at 11 years old. And then when she was 15, she was enrolled in New England Conservatory in Boston, double major in organ, piano, and piano teaching. So she also studied composition and counterpoint with a lot of composers in Boston that time, such as George Chadwick. And then she graduated in 1906 with a diploma in both teaching and organ. So Price was married to Thomas J. Price, a lawyer, in 1912 when she was 25. But unfortunately, she was suffered from domestic violence, so she divorced. And after divorce, she was having a little bit struggle with her life, and she lived with a pianist, and it was really the community, the women musicians around her that really supported her through that time. And in 1932, after she divorced a couple years, she won the first prize in the Wanamaker Foundation Awards for her symphony in E minor, which was one of the most well-known works and most performed works now from Price. And this award really, really helps Price in terms of financial and also her career development. So after that, she also moved to Chicago, and in Chicago, there are a lot of associations, a lot of even women orchestras to perform Price work. And also the NANM, the National Association of Negro Musicians, really helped Price in a lot of ways. And interestingly, from the correspondence between Price and Mary Anderson, Mary Anderson was really helping to promote a lot of Price work through including it in the repertoire of her tours, Mary Anderson's tours. And then Price was saying that, thank you for including my work, because every time we performed it, my ranking in the association will rise, and it will help me a lot as a composer. So Price was the first African-American women composer, whose work was officially played by a major US orchestra. And and also the collaboration between Price and Mary Anderson was a lot of arrangement that piano arrangement Price made for Anderson's concerts, like spirituals and stuff. So in their correspondences, Price also requested a lot of times to arrange for Mary Anderson for her program and spirituals and melodies. So we all know that Mary Anderson's most iconic performance was the Lincoln Memorial Concert in 1939. And Price actually arranged a couple works for her for that concert, and it was also included in the program list. So yeah, today I am gonna play, so this the work I'm gonna play is very, very different from the scherzo from Clara Schumann I just played. It was a little bit ragtime style and very modern compared to the very classical and traditional 19th century romantic work. So this piece is called Down a Thousand Lane. I think this is probably inspired by her growing experiences in the South, Price growing experiences in the South. And this work is really featured, like this, one of the most iconic feature of this work is the contrast. So like Clara Schumann's work, this work also is kind of in an ABA style with a coda in the end. And so it starts with this very tranquilizing character of E flat major, and then it gradually grows into a syncopated rhythm with like a kind of ragtime style middle section, and then it goes back to the first session with a very like not jazz-like, but very different coda. Yeah, and then it was very interesting that I found this work. So a lot of Price piano works were not published. They were not even officially published. And if you look on Amazon's and other websites, you can't even find a lot of her works. It's only her sonata and symphony in E minor that were being published. So this book, I actually found it in a Penn library, and I also have to request it because it's in the warehouse, and so it's really not very famous and well played, and it's like buried in warehouses. So this piece is one of the 17 short descriptive works for solo piano she composed from 1938 to 1940. So this piece was specifically in 1939. It's interesting that the Lincoln Memorial Concert also happened in 1939. So yeah, that's my little intro for this piece, and I will play it and hope you all enjoy it. my culture. It's a legend that I grew up with. It's called The Butterfly Lovers. The Butterfly Lover is the English translated name for this Chinese legend. So the Chinese name is called Liang Shanbo, Liang Shanbo being the name of the boy, the main character, and then Zhu Yingtai being the female character of this story. So I have a lot to say about this story because it's something it's something I grew up with. So I remember first hearing it in primary school. My teacher told me that, and also my parents told me that too. It was a very, very beautiful but sad story. So I also put a little Chinese quote on the program list for this piece because I think it's interesting that to think about how music is telling a story and to explore this narrative aspect of the music. And I think the words and the characters are as beautiful as the notes and the melodies I'm going to play, so I really want to put it there. So this story also happened in a place called Hangzhou in China. So it's a very special place for me. So I was born in Shanghai, but Hangzhou was kind of the second home to me because my parents went to college there and they met there. And they always brought me to Hangzhou every year to like walk around campus and like remember their past. So it's a very special place for me. And so I'm gonna introduce a little bit about the story itself, what's going on with the story, because this piece is almost feeling like a ballad, like the ballad number one I played for Chopin. It feels like some kind of similarity in that in telling a story, because it has different sections and each section is telling a different thing. So I'm gonna start an introduction of the story. So Zhu Yingtai, the female character of this story, is the only daughter of a very wealthy family of the Zhejiang province of China. And so women are traditionally discouraged from taking and receiving education in Asian China. So she wasn't allowed to go to school, but she felt for that and she convinced her father to allow her to attend classes, but only in disguise as a man. And so she met Liang Shanbo, the male character, on their way to school. And they studied together for the next 3 years, but Liang Shanbo did not notice that Zhu Yingtai was a girl because she was in disguise. But Zhu Yingtai gradually falls in love with Liang Shanbo until one day, Zhu Yingtai receives a letter from her father asking her to return home as soon as possible because her father has arranged this marriage between her and a very wealthy merchant, like some random merchant, but he's very wealthy. So Zhu Yingtai's father wanted her to marry this wealthy man. So like Zhu has no choice but to pack her belongings immediately and bid Liang farewell. So a month later, when Liang visited Zhu, because they said like we're gonna visit each other at some point in the future, he discovered that she's actually a woman. And through a lot of follow-away interactions, they fall in love with each other. But unfortunately, Zhu's father was opposing this marriage. It's very funny because it's like Clara's father was opposing she and Robert Schumann. Zhu's father was also opposing this marriage. And so Liang was very heartbroken, and when he heard the news that Zhu Yingtai was married, and he gradually became very, very ill and finally died very soon. And then the last part and the climax story happened on the day of Zhu's marriage or her wedding ceremony. So on the day Zhu was married to this wealthy merchant, strong winds prevent the wedding procession from escorting the bride. So they were like having a parade on this road, but they are passing by Liang Shanbo's grave. And then Zhu left the procession to pay her respect to Liang's grave. And that so suddenly the grave opens with a clap of thunder. And then Zhu throws herself into the grave to join Liang, and then they both die, but their spirits emerge in the form of a pair of butterflies and fly away together, never to be separated again. So the reason I choose this piece is first because the story itself is related to the theme I'm demonstrating in this recital today. So Zhu Yingtai was this very courageous, resilient, brave woman figure who first convinced her father and fought for her right to receive education, and also not being willing to marry someone she didn't love, but to pursue the real love she's feeling. And it's very respectful. And the second reason for me to choose this piece is because the woman pianist who first adapted this piece into the piano version was one of the first and most iconic female Chinese pianists. Her name is Wu Yili. She is one of the members of the first generations of Chinese pianists who gained international fame. And she arranged the piano accompaniment for this Butterfly Lovers violin concerto. So this piece was initially written in violin concerto, but for like a Western style orchestra. And I remember actually hearing Gil Shaham's recording last year about this, which is also very moving. And she arranged this, she first arranged the piano accompaniment of this violin concerto. And so yeah, she was the first one to make it possible to play it on piano. So that's also one of the most important reasons why I choose this piece today. So I hope you all enjoy it, enjoy the story, and enjoy the interaction between words and story and notes and music. address some interesting parallel between this Butterfly Lover and this last piece, Whitman. English translation is Dedication. So it's interesting because I talked to my piano teacher, Wenxin, amazing piano teacher sitting here, on Monday, and we decided the program order. And so the final order was putting these pieces back to back together as the two last pieces. And this morning when I was thinking about what I'm going to say and writing about the speech, I just found this interesting parallel because they're both about love stories. They're about struggle, fighting for freedom to pursue their love. There are a lot of obstacles facing these two couples, Robert and Clara Schumann, and also Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai. And also, it's also the father of the girl who opposed the marriage. It's very interesting. And so one thing that these two pieces and these two stories share in common is that the couple, their love is because they have the same passion. So what I haven't mentioned before was more details about Robert Schumann and Clara Schumann. So they both have very high dedication to music, and when they first married, they even had like a diary. So Robert Schumann had this diary to Clara Schumann was like, oh, we're gonna have this unified goal to be both great composers and musicians after we married. So their love for each other comes from their shared common passion and dedication to things they love and they're pursuing in their lives. And the second point was this very interesting connection between language and music, because I know Dr. Kaplan's here today. I took Dr. Kaplan's seminar on neuroscience and music last fall, and it was one of my favorite classes at Penn, because I'm reflecting my life at Penn, because today is the last day of my undergrad, so I'm just getting really sentimental. So in his class, I remember we read a lot of papers about language and music. So it's interesting from a neuroscience perspective and from somebody who's very interested in neuroscience, that the brain areas that are processing language, the syntax in language and music actually have a lot of overlap, and there are a lot of like same regions processing both. I think for both of these pieces, they have this deep connection between language and music, text and music. And actually, language and music, in a lot of ways, they're very similar to each other. They resonate with each other, they support each other to build up this narrative, and also from a neuroscience perspective, they light up the same area. So I also provided a text for the dedication with the program booklet if you have it, and probably you can even follow the melodies with the text when you're listening, because it's very, very lyrical. And I hope that when you're all listening, you can feel and explore this deep connection and this very inherent connection between words and notes, sentence and lines, and language and music in general. And you can see how they support each other and actually build up this very moving and very touching narrative as a whole, as an entirety. Okay, before I play, I am also going to introduce a little bit about Whitman, because this is a very romantic piece, very, very romantic piece. And so I first encountered this piece when I was young. So my father was obsessed with a lot of collecting CDs at home. And I remember this one CD he played over and over again was one of the CDs that had this piece, and also Liszt B minor sonata, which is a very insane piece. And so this was my first encounter with this piece. And so last summer, I also came across this recording by legendary pianist Van Cliven. And when I first heard his recording of Whitman, I just burst into tears, because it was so touching, so moving. It was the pure love, and this dedication to the marriage was just very touching in general. So Whitman was the first song from a song cycle that Robert Schumann wrote for Clara as a wedding gift. So it's a wedding gift. So it's sort of like a bride price for Clara. And this was the first
and the opening one, and it was regarded as a profound expression of marital devotion. And it was also one of Clara's favorite songs from Robert Schumann. So this song cycle was also inspired by a lot of, so the text was inspired by a lot of German poets. And in particular, the text of this Widmer, this lieder, was composed by Friedrich Rickert, a German poet. And Schumann also made modifications to it to change the title in order directly to engage Clara in it. And just like a fun fact that how Robert Schumann was like expressing his love for Clara in his composition. So I don't know if you guys know the Clara theme. So Robert Schumann has the actually it's CHOCDA. It was the nickname in the German naming system for Clara, and he was incorporating this theme in his concertos and other works. So if you love somebody, just do that. Get their abbreviations and transcription notes and incorporate it in your work. And this Widmer was also, the melody in this piece was reused in so it was foreshadowing the melodies of the other leaders in the same song cycle. But in particular, this song is demonstrating Robert Schumann's concept of the artist as a man inspired and freed through love. So it was a very, very, and the intensity of the emotions is very high. Yeah, and also this piece was set in A flat major, which is one of my favorite key signatures. I think it's a very warm key signature and it's very suitable for this this occasion. So yeah, I think it's my last piece of this recital today, and I think it's a really great piece to end it. for today's recital, and I hope you guys all enjoy the narration, the little lecture, all the interesting stories, and the music overall. So thank you so much for coming.